Here we go. Perfect. All right. Let me share my screen. Um, oh, and lastly, the the work that I do is pretty much word of mouth for the past 15 years. And so it's been crazy. Not sure if, that that format will survive with AI and everything. But yeah, I've been lucky and blessed, maybe it's the right word, to be able to do what I do and help organizations like UCLA with projects big and small. And so if you guys encounter, any projects or initiatives that you all might think, I could provide value to, just let me know. It's been an amazing 9 years now with UCLA that I've been a consultant. So happy to help you guys and happy to, continue working with you and having an amazing a conversation. So just want to throw it out there just in case you find yourself like, hey, this might be something Ian can help us out with. I'm here. I'm here for you guys. All right. So for today, one second. Um, for today, we're gonna go over um a lot of items that we talked about, but there are some new ideas, and we'll spend more time with that. We're gonna go through some evaluation tools and NPV, net present value, IRR, things like that. But the good thing is that for your cohort, PMI doesn't require that you do the math to calculate, for example, for net present value. Before, we you had to be able to do it by hand. So, this is, before COVID. So we would spend an entire day, in a physical classroom and have folks come up to the board and by hand calculate NPVs and IRRs and all of that. Um, you don't have to, which is great. You just need to understand what does NPV mean, for example, and when you're comparing to opportunities, which one makes sense depending on the value. So we'll go over that today. Um, and the rest, thankfully, we have covered a lot of the organizational changes and a lot of the stakeholder stuff. So we'll breeze through that and focus on, new content that we have. One second. Let me reboot them. My screen's frozen. Just give me 2 seconds, guys. Um, Let me reshare. Um, there we go. Is it changing slides for you guys now? Can you see? Okay, good. Awesome. All right. So things we'll be going through, again, risk register, you guys all know about. So we'll just focus on things that we haven't spent a lot of time on. And as always, please stop me if there's something you want to double click on. All right, so compliance requirements. So one of the things that I've noticed organizations do is that they focus a lot on compliance requirements, right? Which you should. But there usually isn't some, especially on the project side, that is taking a look at regulatory. So for the test, and also, in real life, when you think of compliance, think um, internal, right? So this is usually, for your organization, for the hospital, for UCLA. You think regulatory, think external, right? These are Medicare, Medicaid, CMS. So compliance internal, regulatory external, right? So you want to be looking at both because a lot of times people just focus on compliance because that's what's readily available. And the laws are, speaking of laws, uh, one of the things that we advocated for in Sacramento in May, meeting with legislative staffers and some of the state senators, was the need for guardrails for AI. And, we met with both sides of the aisle, spent an entire day explaining why we need these guardrails and what should be included and all of that. And I'm super excited to report to you guys that California is the first state in the country to have legislation around AI chatbots, and one of which requires all the chatbots to clearly indicate, that they're not a medical professional. They can't give medical advice. They're not, a licensed therapist. So you can give recommendations, but this isn't the same as, talking to a certified therapist, psychiatrist, psychologist. Um, a lot of language around protection around minors. So this was something that was just signed by the governor, and uh, I'm I'm really happy because we're entering this golden age of advocacy wherein the legislators are just as scared and concerned about AI and what it's doing. So when we're talking to them, they're actually listening. They're actually thinking about, okay, how does this affect your industry? Obviously, for me, it's healthcare. And so, yeah, so that has been passed. And that is something that I think will help provide guardrails um and so knowing that, right, that's being passed, or that was passed, and it takes effect January 1st. So for UCLA, we do have a lot of AI enabled technology, and we have some chatbots. So part of the regulatory constraint is figuring out, okay, well, what is this thing that Ian was talking about? And let's see if there's anything here that we're non-compliant, right? So compliance internal, regulatory external, and make sure that someone is taking a look at what are the regulatory constraints, because otherwise, if you're not compliant, then there's a lot of, rework that needs to happen. But yeah, just wanted to take a second to share that with you guys because that was a landmark initiative. And what's funny is I was talking to Kathleen about, what we're doing around advocating for this, and she was a bit pessimistic. She was like, Ian, Gavin, he gets a lot of donor funds from the tech companies. There's no way he's going to sign legislation that's putting guardrails around what they do. And I'm like, we'll see. We'll see. But it's something that we need. And, we'll let the pieces fall where they may. And so I was super excited to forward it to her and say, well, your buddy Gavin signed it. So here we are. So now we're trying to do the same in Seattle and in Maryland. So we're working with universities there to help craft legislation that they can, advocate for their state. So I'm pretty excited about, what California has done and how we're leading the country in this regard. So if anyone's interested, I could, send you guys the link to the Senate bill that was passed. All right. Risk register. I think we beat this one to death. What's what is the cousin of the risk register for issues? What do we call it?
Issue
Issue
log.
log.
Issue log. Yeah. So we beat that one to death. Um, let's see here. Configuration management. So again, for the test, when you think configuration management, think product, right? Think requirements, think specifications. So this is, allows you to track changes, any versions, um, monitor and control. So all of that pertains to the product. So when you think configuration management, think product management. So it's a good way to track, how we're configuring, right? It's the product that we're building. So configuration management equals product management. All right. These are some of the compliance categories. Quality, safety, workplace health, um, especially when you're looking at doing business internationally, understanding here, what their legal landscape is and how they define things like bribes. So, see if Mike is around. Um, So Mike has done a lot of international construction projects. And what you'll find is that um, it- they just call it kind of standard operating procedure where, like you need to get a permit for the town, you need to get a permit for the province, for example. And none of that, will move along without uh, greasing the wheel, so to speak. And so understanding that legal and regulatory landscape is very important and make sure that you're coloring within the lines. And so um, it's very important as you're looking in, at doing business in international areas that you have a legal team that understands the local laws so that you don't get in trouble as you're trying to succeed, with the project that you're working on. So compliance reporting, let's see here. So one of the problems that you'll encounter when you're doing, especially really big, like manufacturing or anything that has um, a lot of QA, QC, is how do you quickly bubble up, right? Any compliance issues so that it gets to the right level and it's addressed at the right level. So um, I was talking to this lady from China during the mRNA conference a few weeks ago, and she has she has the whole mRNA supply chain from the raw materials, which is the DNA, to the design of it, to the what's called filtration, um, all the way to, getting it into doing the testing, QA, QC to packaging to shipping. And I was asking her, how do you use technology to bubble up issues in your supply chain before you start processing hundreds of thousands of vials. And it is astounding how much compliance reporting, automated compliance reporting they have, and how much it without the technology, there's no amount of manual work that can compensate because you're looking at this like super small nanometers. It's so fascinating how we create vaccines and all of that and the QA and QC that goes into it. It's not perfect by any means, but the most important thing is as you find these issues, how do you quickly report it up to the right person so it can be addressed? Now, there's a flip side of this, which, I'm really excited about and what I was, speaking about at this conference, which is um, predictive analytics. So now we can do what's called digital twins, where you create, right? You create the sample spike protein, and then you mimic, like how will, your antibodies react to it and all of that. And you can also, with the digital twin, you can simulate, how is the DNA gonna react if you design it this way, so on and so forth. And so compliance in the near future will not just be, there's a mistake and we need to fix it, right? Soon it will be there's a predicted mistake, right? And we're going to fix it before we even run the actual test. And for me, that is so fascinating. Have any of you guys seen an old movie? It's called Minority Report. Tom Cruise. You
Yes.
remember
Great,
that movie,
great
Pete?
movie. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And and you know, you are under arrest for the future crime,
Future crime.
for the future crime.
Yeah.
And that movie has really stuck with me. And like, how do we do that, but for good? And predictive analytics is the closest, and the digital twin is the closest that we have to the Minority Report approach to things. So keep that in mind, as you're going through or having conversations around compliance, start asking the questions of, is there anything around predictive analytics that we can do? Is there anything around having a digital twin that might make sense? Um, so, Victor, were you at Blockbuster? Which did
Yes,
you
I
stay?
was at Blockbuster.
Oh man. The good old days. I'll segue for just 30 seconds. I have to say there is a unique feeling that you don't get today with everything available. That feeling of, it's a Friday night and what's Blockbuster? And you head on out, with your friend, your partner, whatever it might be, and then you're looking for that movie, right? And it's like a scavenger hunt. And like I wonder, this thing came out yesterday, Thursday, do we have enough copies? And when you find the last one, right, Victor? Right, get the last copy of, Minority Report or whatever it is. There's that feeling of
Oh,
like,
people
you
were
won,
asking
right?
I could dig in the return bin, like,
Yes, yes,
yeah,
yes, yes.
okay.
You dig in the return bin, and then there's that one copy of, this movie that you're looking for. And, someone like Victor upsells you to get, the microwavable popcorn.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Oh man. No,
Blockbuster
but
rewards. It
there
started
was
off as a good
nothing.
deal, actually, but then
Yeah. There was nothing as sad though as not getting that new release and
oh
not being
yeah,
able to watch it. You go in there and there's the wall of movies and they're all taken. And that was a very depressing feeling as a child.
that is true. That was the flip side.
So I'm happy my children never have to experience that, but they also don't get the joy of going to a movie store.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're absolutely right. And either you rent reruns or something that was like,
Yeah, yeah.
a 5 out of 10 in your book, and like, oh, you have to watch,
Uh,
Bridget Jones' Diary again.
not again.
But but yeah, so I don't know how we got into video store. Oh, Minority Report. Um, but yeah, so uh you're absolutely right. There's that joy that you get from, oh my God, I found it. But if you don't, it's like, oh, it's the saddest thing on a Friday, not having the movie you want to watch. But yeah, so going back, predictive analytics is something super exciting that will be used, widely very soon. And I'm really excited, around um, antibodies, antibiotics, vaccines, all of those that we can quickly pull together. Um, so yeah, this as of late has been quite an obsession of mine, that everything that goes into creating, you know, pharmacologicals, and how we can improve it with the technology of AI that we have. So, um, all right, variance analysis. So again, variance is looking at the difference, right? So the difference between what was planned or what is expected, and what is actual. So the difference between planned and actual, that is your variance, right? All right. Um, these are some of the things to keep in mind when you're thinking about compliance, new vulnerabilities or exposures, right? So let's say that, let's just stick with making, pharmacologicals. Um, if you're getting if you're getting your raw materials from a new site, I don't know if you saw in the news, there was this manufacturer in India, and they make a lot of the raw materials for, I think it was an antibiotic. I can't remember which one in particular, but because QC had shut it down, and earth material in the world, and so new pharmacologicals. So time you have anything new coming, so that is, a vulnerability, changes in legal and regulatory requirements. So anyone that's putting in any updates in their EMR that has a chatbot in California will now have to comply to this regulation that I just mentioned starting January 1st, right? So these are things that are really tangible for us here in healthcare. Errors in testing. So you always want to have someone reviewing not just the test results, but ensuring that we're testing the right things. So this is more of a quality assurance versus quality control. So quality assurance focuses more on, what are the policies, what are the steps, what are the things that we're checking, and quality control focuses more on the results. So that's one of the differences between the two. Errors and bugs and lack of awareness again with compliance, and I would add here regulatory requirements. All right. Sign-offs and approvals. Let's see if there's anything new here. So you want to figure this out early on in the process, right? Who are the people that need to sign off on your QA and QC? And if they're not available, right, who can be the secondary or the backup? Uh, a lot of times projects get delayed literally because of the lack of a signature to move on to the next phase, right? So make sure that who's the primary and also, if possible, who's a secondary for the approval process. All right. So what happens if, after doing all of this, you find that you're non-compliant, right? So that is very costly because now you have to, redo a lot of things and in the clinical trial world, going from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3, it is the estimate is around the low end is 200 million, the high end is around 2 billion when you're coming up with a new drug. And non-compliance is the number one cause of the increase in cost. You have to go back, not just do it all over again, but it could be that the machinery, the equipment, is the part that's non-compliant. It's not, producing the results that you want. And so you have to, resource uh, the equipment that you're using. And also, as you think about scaling, you still have to follow those requirements. So it's really non-compliance in the, biotech world is the number one cause of overages. Um, and you're talking tens of hundreds of millions. For us, if for example you're working on an IT project, you might be able to quickly go back, fix the code or whatnot, change settings, but as long as you catch it before, the end user starts using it, you're still in a good spot. It's when the end user finds it that you're really in a bad spot. I don't know if you guys remember, we talked about the non-conformance, internal, everything that you're doing, and external is when, the customer starts to find it and what are the repercussions there. So it's the same thing here. If you find non-compliance before you send it out, awesome. But more often than not, if the end user finds it, then you have to go through all of these issues here. All right. Um, Quality management plan, as we mentioned, this is how you go about, right? Doing your quality management, not necessarily all of the actual tests that you will be doing. So describes the resources, activities, sets expectations, okay. Control quality process outputs. So one of the things for the test I want you guys to be familiar with is functional and non-functional requirements. So an easy way to remember this is functional requirements is what the end user uh, touches, uses, interacts with. So for example, in a car, brakes, that's a functional requirement, right? Opening the door, functional requirement. Steering wheel, functional requirement. Non-functional would be warranty, right? Would be um, terms and conditions around, how long, if, let's say you have a Tesla, how long will you have your FSD feature, the full self-driving feature? So things that are important, even even paint, for example. So paint would be a non-functional requirement, right? It's not something that the user interacts with. It's not something that um, would affect, in this case, the performance of the car. So remember that for the test, functional is something that the end user interacts with. Non-functional is a part of it, but they don't interact with. Another example would be, let's say, for example, an electronic medical record. You know, being able to log in is a functional requirement. The cybersecurity features is not, right? It's not something that the end user interacts with. All right. So we talked about escalation process, if things aren't resolved at the lowest level, how do you go up and who do you talk to and what is the information that they need? So the most important thing when you're escalating an issue is you need to have something in both of your hands. In one hand, you need to have the problem that you need help with. In your other hand, you need to have proposed solutions, right? Never escalate an issue without any proposed solutions because the director, VP, or C-suite person is not as intimate with this issue as you are, right? You have been dealing with this person has not. So when you bring up an issue, always bring up a proposed solution. Are you guys familiar with the S-bar approach? Right? What does it stand for, guys? You guys remember?
Situation, background, assessment, recommendation.
And recommendation. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks, Pete.
Yep.
Um, it's not going to be in the test, but I think it's an amazing tool when you're escalating something, right? Tell them about the situation, what's going on. Tell them about the background. Tell them about your assessment. And lastly, tell them about your recommendation. All right. Um, Quality audits. The key word here is external team. So you want a third party, a new pair of eyes doing your quality audits, right? What is the danger of having the internal team do the quality audits? What do you guys think?
Maybe a conflict of interest.
Yep, conflict of interest is one. Anything else?
I'd say blind spots.
There you go. That's what I'm looking for. A conflict, Kelly, absolutely. But beyond that is the blind spots. How many times have you had, a guest come over to your house and say, "Hey, Pete, this is a cool, picture, toy, whatever." You're like, "Oh, haven't noticed that for a while, right?" Because your eyes get familiar, right? And then when things get familiar, they don't trigger a response. A new pair of eyes, right, everything's new, so it's going to trigger a response and they're going to start asking questions. So that's why you need an external team. And if anything else, the basic questions. Why are we doing it this way? Why did you use that? Why not this? What happened if you do that? So all of these questions that as an internal team, especially if you've been working on this project for a while, you probably, asked those questions months ago, but not recently. So a new pair of eyes is really important. So for the test, quality audits, make sure that it's conducted by an external team. All right. So for the audits, these are just some of the things that you need to do. Verify compliance, use best practices, use lessons learned, things that we have talked about before. Okay. This is something we haven't talked about. So for the test, there are two types of sampling, right? The first type is called attribute sampling. Second is variable. So attribute means that it's either yes or no, right? Either you conform or you don't conform. It's very binary, right? Variable, on the other hand, is on a sliding scale. So everything from 0 and 100%. So you can say that this sample meets or conforms with the requirements 95% of the time, right? So that's variable sampling. Now, if you just say, does it conform or not? So it's 100 or 0, right? Does it conform? Yes or no? So, all right, let me stop sharing here. Nikki,
Yes.
which which type of sampling uses a sliding scale? Attribute or variable? Or sorry,
Variable.
variable. Yep. Um, Jennifer Hernandez. Which type of sampling is just met or unmet?
Sorry, I came in late. I just came in.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah.
Kelly or Tuno? Which type of sampling just captures met or unmet?
Attribute sampling.
Attribute. Yep, that is correct. So do remember that, because that's one of the PMI's favorite things to ask. It's pretty simple, but if you haven't encountered it, then you don't know. All right. These are some of the guidelines for measuring project compliance. Make sure you have a clear plan. You make sure that everyone knows the output that you're measuring. Again, what does success look like, right? What are you shooting for? And what are some of the corrective actions if you don't meet that level of quality, right? All right. Before we move to evaluate and deliver project benefits and value, any questions around quality? Anything you guys want me to go back and review? We're good? Okay. All right. So earlier today, I mentioned that we will look at how do you, if you're looking at two different alternatives, there are a lot of tools that you can use and a lot of acronyms that we'll go over today. EVM, ROI, NPV, IRR. The beauty of it is that, again, you don't need to do the math, and let alone by hand. But we'll go over the value, what does it mean, and what do the values mean for you, and how you can quickly remember it if it shows up in the test. All right, so business value, this is, what does the business get out of it, right? So this is something that is usually tangible, like it's quantifiable, right? So when you talk about, let's say, this new tool can increase efficiency in the OR. Okay. Which efficiency? Is it getting the patient in and out of the room? Is it decreasing, surgical time? Is it induction time? What are you talking about? So it has to be quantifiable. So keep this in mind when, people talk about the value add, right, to the organization or the department. Make sure that you can measure it, and also you can look at before you use this product and after, and what was the tangible benefit to the organization. So benefit management plan, again, this is a document that just captures how are we going to go about and figure out, benefits will this project give us, and how will we measure it. These are examples of things that are included, target benefits, strategic alignment, how long time frame. It's not unusual to see a dip in terms of the benefits before it spikes up. So that would be, your learning curve. So UCSF, they're looking at revamping patient rooms by using, smart technology, latest and greatest. And when you use that, especially, RTLS and all of that, for a minute, it's going to be cumbersome till people get familiar. So you're actually going to see a drop, right, in terms of whatever it is that you're trying to capture. And you, as a project manager, you want to explain that to the stakeholders ahead of time. Like, look, while everyone's getting used to this new tool, we might actually see a delay, or it might actually take more time, right, for the nurses to deal with their patients, because everyone's trying to figure out what does this button do and all of that. How do I order, meals off of this new, iPad that's in front of me? So you're going to have a little bit of a delay, but eventually, as people get through that, training or initiation phase, then you'll start seeing the benefit. So you want to bring that up so that when things get slower, you can go back and say, yep, this is what's expected. A lot of times vendors try to, just focus on the benefits without sharing that. And then you end up with, frustrated users. Sprint demo reviews. We talked about this on the agile phase. It helps that you guys remember the user stories, right? With the user stories comes the acceptance, of the story, and getting quick feedback from the end user that's helping you, with this sprint. And again, making sure that everyone knows, what are we measuring, right? What is it that is providing value, and focus the conversation on that. Make sure that that user story. Speaking of which, does anyone remember the three components of the user story?
Role, goal, and benefit.
There you go. Give me can you give me an example? As a
As a
patient?
as a
Yeah.
patient,
Yep.
um,
I
I
want
would like
to,
to schedule an appointment,
right, in order to,
see my doctor.
there you go. So role, goal, and benefits. So please remember that for the test. And so in benefits management, we're looking at, the acceptance of the story and also any feedback around that. Release management. So companies like Apple, Samsung, pretty much every big company, they have their release schedule. And so for us, we also have release schedules, for Epic upgrades, like um is it twice a year?
Yeah,
Anyone?
twice a year.
Twice a
Yes.
year, right? Yeah. So you have, all of the steps that leads into that release. And then you want to make sure that you give enough time for feedback so that you're not cramming these releases. One of the I spent some time with an EMR company, and they have me help in the delivery optimization, I think was my role. But one of the things that I really pushed back on was cramming so much into a release that the QC is compromised. My philosophy is it's better to get a few things done, but done correctly, than bring out a lot of new features and we weren't able to take care of the bugs. And what they were trying to do is catch up with the competitor, right? Like, Cerner has this, so we need to have that, and Epic's going to launch this, so we need to have that. But in reality, what kills a company is usually not the competition, but it's your failure to deliver to your existing clientele the products and services that they expect from you. So if you deliver, if your release has a lot of bugs, a lot of issues, things that you rush through, people are going to get frustrated. And if that happens repeatedly, then they're going to start to look around, right? So um, you need to be, so that's number one. And number two, you need to be okay with whatever your definition of done is. It's not the best. That's why there's recurring releases. And you need to be okay with that. We're gonna release this set of features, and this is what it can do. And in our next release, it can do more. And that's okay. Companies always get in trouble when they try to cram last minute, because Jennifer Mansourian requested this, and she's the chief medical officer, and so we'll try to appease her, and we'll expedite things and not do our regular rigorous testing, and that almost always backfires. So make sure that you are more focused on the quality of the items that you're releasing versus the quantity. All right, just some terminologies here. Disciplined, disciplined agile versus undisciplined agile. So this is just a toolkit that pulls in, all the different agile practices, lean, Kanban, Scrum, so they call it disciplined agile. So it's simply a toolkit that brings in a lot of the different agile practices. So these are some of the advantages. Here's a new term for you guys: minimum business increment. Let's finish this and we'll take a 10-minute break. So MBI, minimum business increment. So this is like the smallest amount of requirements so that we can put together wherein you can see, visualize, experience a benefit. So an example would be, let's say that we're creating a new patient portal, and being able to log in, right, is an example of a minimum business increment. Like, log in successfully, right? So obviously it's not the whole patient portal experience, but it is an important component, and it's small enough that you can encapsulate it and say, okay, the first MBI would be the ability of the patient to log in. So that's an example. So just putting in their username is not enough. Putting in their password is not enough. They need to be able to be authenticated and get into the system. So that would be an example of minimum business increment. All right, so let us take a quick break and let's reconvene 11:12. Hey guys.
Hey,
I was trying to see if Mike could join us, give a few words as today is our final day. He's gonna try to join, so we'll see. All right. Let me share my screen. Okay. So, um, we went over this. Okay, benefit cost analysis. So, same thing as cost benefit analysis. This is where, if you have two competing projects and you want to look at, which one gets the biggest bang for your buck or which approach. So you want to look at, what are we getting, the benefits, and what would it cost us to get those benefits? So that's, in a nutshell, your cost benefit analysis. Oh, thanks, Melissa. No worries. But there are different ways of looking at cost benefits, right? So you want to make sure that the benefits outweigh the cost, but this is th this this concept is harder in healthcare because there are things that we do that might not yield financial benefit as much as the cost, but we do it because it's the right thing to do, right? It makes patients safer, it's better treatment, it helps families taking care of the patients. So for us, we have to take into account the overall experience of the patients, caregivers, and the staff that's providing the care. And that might not necessarily translate into more dollars, right? But it's the right thing to do. Um, one of my favorite um, technologies in the ER is the blanket warmer. It is one of the most amazing tools that I can give, when I was working bedside in the ER to, a stressed out mother that doesn't know if, their kid's gonna make it, or to a patient that's waiting for their CT or MRI and it's 2 in the morning. Um, that warm blanket just provides such a nice feeling in a day that you didn't expect, right? No one plans on ending up in the ER, but when they do, small things like this blanket warmer, for me is one of the best technologies. And will it increase revenue in the ER? Probably not. No one. You're taken to the closest ER, so it's not like you have a choice. But it provides such benefit to the patients and family that it's one of those things that you just do because it's the right thing to do. Now this becomes really pertinent. Let's say, for example, we have an available lot, or there's a rental that we can use for UCLA. So now the question is, do we put a renal center there, or renal clinic, or do we put a neuro center or a neuro clinic, right? So these are questions that come up all the time for executives, and providing them with a good cost benefit analysis will really help them figure out, okay, which way to go. Because as everyone here knows, you can't have everything all at once. And there's always a trade-off, right? Regardless of how big the company is, there's always a trade-off. So that's where your cost benefit analysis comes into play. Some of the concepts that you need to be familiar with for this, the first one is a PV, which is present value. This is the current value of future sum of money or cash given a specific rate of return. So in simple words, if you look at the money in the future, how much is that now, right? Given a specific, a rate of return, and here's a formula that will help with that. So, and again, don't freak out. You don't need to do the math. You just need to be familiar with the term. So if you're trying to calculate the present value, you're looking at the future value, divided by 1 plus the rate of return, and n here is time. So if you need 3 grand in 3 years and can invest your money at 8%, so the present value? So 3,000, right? So that's your future value. You were just substituting here, right? FV is future, 3,000. And we said 8%. So 1, that's just, a constant plus 8%. And 3 years, right? I think that was 3 years that they said. Yeah, in 3 years. So N is your time. So you just do the math. 3,000 divided by, so you do the addition first, so 1.08 to the third power, and the answer is, a 2381. So how or why is this important? If you're looking at present value calculation, let's say for another opportunity, let's say it's $5,000 in 3 years, but your interest rate is let's say 5%, which one is better? So you just do the math and then look at, which value is higher. So when you're comparing present value, the only thing you need to remember is that the higher the present value, the better. Okay, so the higher the present value, the better. That's all you need to do. You're not going to be asked to calculate the formula for present value. Does that make sense before we move on?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So who was that? Was that Nikki?
No, that was me, Kelly.
Oh, Kelly. So Kelly, you have 2 options. The first option, present value is 2,000. Second option, present value is 4,000. Which one you go with?
4,000 because it's
Oh.
higher.
Higher. That's it. Yep, that's it. That's all you need to remember for the test. Now, for all of you who, love to do math, here's the formula. All right. So another term you need to be familiar with, again, don't need to do the math, is NPV, or net present value. So this is the present value, and we covered what present value is, of all cash flows minus the present value of all cash inflows. So here you're looking at money coming in, money coming out. So for the test, all you need to remember is the higher the NPV, the better. Same thing with present value. So when you're comparing 2 options, you go with the one with the higher net present value. That's all you need to remember. IRR, internal rate of return, same thing. Um, for IRR, you want to go with the higher value when you're comparing two different things. And this is the discounted rate. Wherein the NPV is this is a longer equation, but again, you won't be expected to have to do the math on this. So just remember that the higher the internal rate of return, the better. The higher the net present value, the better. The higher your present value, the better. Same thing with return on investment. The higher the return on investment, also known as rate of return, the better. So a positive ROI is good. Negative ROI is obviously bad. So this measure looks at the gains or loss of the investment based on, how long will it take, right, for you to be able to recoup the money that you put in, right? There's another term that is part of all this. It's called break-even analysis. Has anyone heard of this? Break-even analysis. So let's say that you invested 10 million into a product, and the product makes, just to make math simple, the sales is 2 million a year, after. So what is your break even point? So you invest 10 million and the product makes 2 million a year. Your break even point is how
In
many years?
years?
5 years, right? So if it takes
Yeah.
2, so first year is 2 million, second year is 2, third year is 2, fourth year is 2, fifth year is 2, so that's 10. So that's your break even. So, at what point will you be able to recoup the money that you invested? Now, there's a little bit of nuance to that, but you don't need it for the test, which is, the value of money today is greater than the value of money tomorrow, even if it's just a little bit. An example would be, a pair of Levi's in the 80s. Kenny, how much would that be?
Maybe 10 to 20 bucks.
Right? And today, how much is a 501?
No. Your whole paycheck.
I
No, it's expensive.
think
It's
they're
not
at like
expensive
80
now.
bucks now or something. I
Yeah,
haven't been to Levi's in a bit, but
yeah.
so the future value of money is less than the present. So when you're looking at break even, the example I gave was obviously very simple, just to prove a point, but you have to factor in, the future value of money. But you don't, that is not needed for the test by any means. But I just want you to have that too in your back pocket. So break even analysis is just, when can I get my money back in terms of, years. All right. Net Promoter Score, this is more looking at customer experience, and there are different ways to get Net Promoter Scores. But the thing to remember here too is that the higher the score, the better. So it's, when in doubt, if you guys look, present value, what is better? Higher, lower? Higher,
Higher.
right? NPV, what is better? Higher or lower?
Higher.
IRR, what is better?
Higher.
Right? Rate of return, which one's better?
Higher.
Right? So the only thing to remember that's not higher is, for break-even analysis, what's better? Shorter or longer?
Shorter.
Shorter. You want to recoup your money sweat as soon as possible. So so that's the only thing that's, not higher. It's shorter. Net Promoter Score, this customer experience scores. Which one's better, higher or lower?
Higher.
Higher. So when in doubt, you see one of these items, just go with higher. Like you're like 8 out of 10, the answer is higher, right? And um, I'm happy that this is the case, but I also feel like kind of cheated because we had to, I took this when, these were black and white, but we had to manually calculate out the NPVs, the IRRs, and it was paper. So we had a paper test that you would have to write it out on the paper, the calculation. And yeah, so I'm happy you guys don't have to do that, but at the same time, man, we have to- uh, so all right. So higher is better, except for the break-even analysis, shorter is better. So you guys have heard of A/B testing, right? So Patrick, what's an A/B testing in your mind?
I feel like I've seen an example where like Amazon will maybe test out like a new colored button on like the buy now, but it's only for like maybe 50 users. And then they determine based on that and what their other group is that has another color, which one performs better.
Yes, yes, yes. That's absolutely it. So you have one option for one group, another option for another group, and it's usually current state, to your point, Patrick. The buy now is whatever color it is now, and then a new color, let's say, magenta, for a limited number and see if there's a difference. So that's absolutely it. You can also do like same thing, like, but just net new stuff where you're testing. So at UCLA marketing, I had the opportunity to work with them for a few years around COVID, and we would do a lot of A/B testing in terms of, which one does the users click on more. If we move the, schedule your appointment to the bottom versus to the upper right. And I was, just looking at what is the result of that. Um, Another example of looking at probabilities is what's called a Monte Carlo simulation. The only thing you need to remember for the test that this is a computer generated model. That's the only thing you need to remember. So Monte Carlo, um, remember C for Carlo as computer. So it is a technique that a computer does the simulation for you. It looks at the probability of, something happening. So let's say you want to calculate the odds of, you being hit by while bitten by a shark in Huntington Beach. So Monte Carlo simulation, you put in all the different variables and it does the probability checks for you. Monte Carlo, for those of you who are interested, that's one of the biggest places for gambling, and so this is, when you're looking at probability, it's a gamble. So that's where the name came from. So outputs are generated to represent the range of possible outcomes. So I can't remember the name of the show. I think it was on NBC. There's a show, and you guys might remember it. It's a group of geniuses that the government hired, like a group of consultants. And what they do is try to figure out the probability of bad things happening with a specific project and a project in terms of military project, right? Like if we attack this country, go in left versus right, use drones versus tanks or whatever it is. And this group of geniuses would help the government, figure all this out. A Scorpio. Scorpio is the name of the show. And that show was based on a real life a person who is a friend of mine, and so he does this for the government. Like he comes up with simulations, helping the DoD with what are the odds that we'll get this attack or that attack. And he created this very complicated computer program. It's called SimGen, a simulation generator. And I share this with you because this was when we were still in Afghanistan. One of the outcomes with his simulation generator was that the water supply for the base actually just came from one pipe, right? Like one pipe was responsible for the entire water supply for this base in Kabul. And part of his SimGen was um, the the Taliban could potentially poison that one pipe, right? And so what they did is they put like a sensor for cyanide. And lo and behold, like after a few years, it turned red. And so they were able to catch it. So that came about with the simulation generation. Like, what are the ways wherein the Taliban can attack our base? And so they preemptively put, the cyanide sensor, and that saved, countless lives for our troops. And so the guy's name is Walter. Um, and he has, it's insane. He has one of the highest IQs in the world. And I asked him, like, how is it in your mind? And he said, normal people can have, one, maybe passively listening to two conversations. He said I can probably do 9. And so he can process, right? So that's exactly my look, Patrick. Um, so he can be talking to you and at the same time, thinking about his taxes, and at the same time trying to figure out where to book date night, and at the same time. And it was just fascinating. I'm like, wow. But there's a downside, like everything in life. The downside is he cannot quiet his mind. And so he goes into, I don't know if you've heard of these uh, isolation chambers. So this is a chamber that has water and high salinity, where the salt level is really high, so you float kind of like on the Dead Sea. But it's it was meant as a torture device that the Russians put together, where it's sensory deprivation. So when you're in this, it's pitch black, like it's a container, a tank. And even if you put your hand to your face like this, you can't see it. It's like pitch black. The temperature of the water is the same as the temperature of the air. So you cannot feel where the air ends and the water begins. And you also can't hear anything from the outside. So it is a sensory deprivation tank, which was meant for torture. But for a lot of people suffering from ADHD or other, like Walter, wherein his mind cannot quiet down, this has been one of the things that has helped him to allow his brain to slowly just be present and focus on nothing. So that was the downside. So knowing that, I told Walter, I'll take what I have and not be able to do 9 conversations at a time. Another thing that's really hard for someone that has this high of an IQ is waiting for everyone to catch up. So if you're planning, a trip, or you're trying to figure out, where to go for lunch, or if you're at Costco with your partner and you're looking at 2 bottled waters. So it actually, he said, which is surprising, um, he said for him, it's been more of a curse than a blessing because just living is hard. Just ordering coffee is hard when there's someone in front of him that's, I'll get a medium, what milk do you have? Oh, you know what? I'll just get tea. That, that experience, he just wants to shoot himself. Because for him, what do you want? Gets it. So, yeah. So anyway, I bring that up because he created a Monte Carlo simulation for the DoD, and it saved so many lives. So it's just, a simulation tool. You don't need to create one, so that's the good part. You just need to remember that it's computer generated and it looks at, probabilities of outcomes. So simulation is anything that uh, you do to, well, predict, right? So we'll see if we include all these variables, what might come out. So you're simulating the future. I'll digress for 30 seconds here. I'm so fascinated how interviews with people like Elon, Sam Altman, all the, really smart folks out there, the conversation always ends up with, do you think we're in a simulation, man? And surprisingly, like a lot of them, like Elon, like he thinks like, you know what? Every day, more and more, I think that we are in a simulation. The more that he learns about AI, and so it's amazing how, people think of reality and for me, simulation is an amazing tool that we have, especially around, pharmaceuticals. Hopefully we can do a lot more simulation. So we don't need to, use a lot of raw materials, make a lot of mistakes, get people sick, and then just learn from the simulation and use the lessons learned there to make our analysis. Decision tree analysis. So this one is super simple. This is when you're looking at, you know, 2 options, right? And if we go with this option, these are the variables. If we go with, option number 2, these are the different variables. So it's a very analog way of, making a decision. Just looking at option A versus option B and what are the things that might go into each option. So yeah, so one of the things that if you are using a decision tree analysis, and I'll find, I don't think I have a slide here. The main purpose of this is to clearly visualize the difference between 2 options. So let's say, Patrick, you're creating a decision tree as to where to go for a vacation, right? For the family. And so option A, let's say, is the beach. Option B is let's go to this city, let's say, Rome, for example, right? So look at, architectural stuff. And so, okay, so option A, beach. Which one are we thinking of? Let's say Cancun. And then you say, okay, so how much will that cost? And then how long will the flight be? And then you just kind of map everything out, cost, flight, food, blah, blah, blah. And then you go to the other branch, right? So let's say we're going to Rome. How much will the flight be? And all of that. But one thing when you're doing this decision tree is also looking at what are the downsides, right? Um, Beach, maybe food poisoning. City, maybe delays in transport, Um, so you put all the pros, the cons, the cost, um, who's in favor of the beach versus going to the city, maybe you have 3 kids and 2 want to go to the beach, 1 wants to go to the city. So you map all of that out into, a piece of paper. And so everyone can see clearly, like, okay, seems like the beach is the better option. However, we've never been there, and it seems like security is an issue in that part of Mexico, and if we do get in trouble, we have no one to talk to. Versus if we're in Europe, then it's safer. It might not be as fun. So everyone can see all the factors, the variables you're looking at. And that's what makes a decision tree. Oh, here, duh. This picture right here in front of me. So the first circle is let's go on vacation, right? And this circle is let's go to the beach. And this one is let's go to the city. And then what are the factors, cost, travel, all of that, and then just kind of map out all of the answers so it's clear to see which option is better. You can also use this obviously for something more sophisticated, like should we build a neurocenter versus a renal center? So, okay, well, renal center, how much will it cost? Do we have the patient population that needs it? How much backlog do we have? And whatever question you ask for option A, you just ask for option B, and then you look at your answers and then start comparing the two. So that's a decision tree. It's very simple, but also very powerful. All right. So those were the big items that I wanted to cover with you guys today. So again, when in doubt, higher is better, right? PV, NPV, IRR. The only thing that is shorter is which one?
Break
You want
point, I think.
Rate of return.
break
Break
even.
point.
Yeah, break even analysis.
Yeah.
So break even. You want that time to be shorter, but everyone else is higher is better. All right. No worries. Hold on. Okay. This might actually be a good stopping point for us because we're at 47 and then support organizational goals. Yeah, let's stop right here. Yep. And come back. I can give you guys a few minutes early and we'll definitely have enough time to finish this up. So I'll give you guys 10 more minutes for your lunch break if everyone is okay. Has to be unanimous. If someone disagrees, we'll just keep on going. Sweta, what do you think?
Yes, we should be fine.
I was just setting you up there to be. All right. So let's we can break now and then we'll come back at 2. But before we do, how's our pacing for today? Just right? Too fast? Too slow? Cool. All right. Cool. Awesome. Well, enjoy the lunch, guys. I will see you back at 2.
Thank you, Anne.
Thanks, Ian.
Thank you.